We're in the Mantua Center Historic District in Mantua, Ohio, checking out these buildings today. Welcome zombies to Mantua, Ohio. We're going to be exploring the Mantua Historic Center. I know it's pronounced M-A-N-T-U-A. You'd think it's like Mantua or something like that, but locally they say it Mantua. So we're going to explore the Mantua Historic Center and also the home, the Airbnb that I've been staying at while I've been here, which is in Mantua, and it's supposedly an 1820s build, and just interesting stuff as far as that home goes. I spent a little bit of time talking to the owners and asking them about the previous owners, the history of the property, and also I spoke with the neighbors about the same thing, the history of the property I was on, the history of the property that they live on, and their neighbors. And I just did a little bit of digging, respectfully of course, into what locals, what their understanding is of where everything has come from, like what's the local history here, and if they had any idea about these older type of buildings. And anyways, I'll get more into that as we go, but Mantua, Ohio. So here's where we're at, kind of taking a look at the northeastern United States, the state of Ohio, coming down, zooming in here, right outside of Cleveland, to this little spot right here, where it says Mantua Center Historic District. And this square right here is the cemetery, and the first shots that I'll show you of the place are I'll be standing right here looking across the cemetery at the historic buildings. So right here's the city of Mantua. We're actually kind of up here. The historic center is kind of more in this part of Mantua. And then if you've watched the previous videos, right here's Hiram, and then right here is the Nelson County Ledge State Park, and there's Nelson, Ohio. So again, we're looking at everything right here in this little small area, but today specifically right in here. So Mantua is a village in Portage County, Ohio. It was formed from portions of Mantua Township in the Connecticut Western Reserve. The first settlers came to Mantua Township in 1798. The area that eventually became the village of Mantua was owned by the Tappan family of Tappanville, later Ravenna, Ohio. This right here is a look at Ravenna, Ohio in the 1800s, 1700s, 15, 14, 13, 12. I don't know how early these goes, but these buildings like this, those are durable. They've been there a long time. These people in this time period didn't build those. Those have been sitting there already for a long time. All straight rock, have all withstood the test of time and disasters, floods, fires, still sitting there. And we showed up, excavated the best we could, created doors and stairs to be able to get into them, and fixed up whatever we needed to the best we could. And then shortly after, for some reason, it's just time to start demolishing all of these and getting rid of them. And any ones that are left behind, it's making sure they're stripped and they don't really look anything like they originally were. But then also for some reason, there are a few still just sitting there. It was founded in 1799, platted in 1808, and is named for the city of Ravenna, Italy. So let's start with the high school. The date that they're given on this, I think the picture being taken is 1923. Massive building. I would say it's already been stripped of a lot of what was on it, but again, you can see just a big rock building left over, buried, windows buried into the ground, and dirt roads. It looks like they've got some curbs up here. Maybe that's maybe a paved sidewalk now at this point. So this right here is a look at the interior of the high school. This is something I haven't done a lot of, looking at the interior, pulling up pictures of the interior, but the interior is, we can look at the outside and really see like that's a different people built that. It's way more impressive than what we could have done in that time period, and even in lots of ways what we're capable of doing now, because everything was just rock. Like again, I said this in a previous video, but we build with twigs. We don't build with heavy, durable rock like all of this stuff. And so, I mean, you can just see it all pretty clearly from the outside, in my opinion. But the inside, the interior is on a whole nother level. Like, we don't even come close to the interior stuff. Like, look at the ceiling. Just complete rock structure, domed, concave ceilings. So here's an 1830s look at the courthouse and jail. Big, big buildings made out of rock. I think they've got the white siding over these ones. And this one was crazy. They're saying this is 1907. Horses and wood wheels on dirt. And all of this is just big rock buildings. I don't know. Really looks to me like this was sitting here. These people showed up. I mean, look at the signs. These signs are poorly, you don't throw these cheap, poorly designed signs on top of these beautifully designed rock buildings. That's not how they would have done it. The builders of these buildings wouldn't allow those signs to be slapped onto those buildings. No way. Yeah, here we go. Okay. Look at that. No way. No way. No way. And to give you a look at some of the damage, I need to do a more in-depth video on this. I know it's something I've kind of just mentioned here and there, but the buildings being buried and how so many of them have been destroyed. I mean, some people showed up in like 1900s and destroyed tons of these buildings. But even before that, you know, all this flooding that I'm talking about, you know, we've got proof of that in the 1800s and the 1900s. Here's an image of it. Like, look at all that destruction, anything made out of wood right here, we're just seeing crushed, basically. Here's another look for the 1913 flood in Ohio. You can see these big brick boys, they stay standing, but the timber lumber stuff, crushed. And look how high up the flooding is. Like, I think this is a bridge right here, and we're flooded all the way up to the bridge. Full homes just to the roof flooded. So it looks like, I'd say this is actually, like, disasters have actually gone, like, swept through these areas and buildings at least a couple times. I'd say several times. So it looks like at some point the actual builders of this stuff were doing their thing, very prosperous, advanced civilization, amazing builders, putting up massive rock buildings with incredible designs. Again, very little we've talked about the interior, but the interior is just absolutely insane. And they got wiped out, and their buildings got, a lot of them, yeah, some of them messed up, but the best built ones have stayed standing but very buried. And then other group has come in and claimed those buildings, but then looks like even that group has dealt with floods and fires and stuff. And then now we're here and we look back at these 1913 things and we're not really told about the floods and fires during that time period. But then when you look at like how old, for example, trees are across the entire country, there's a little pocket maybe every here and there, or a tree every here and there that's older than a couple hundred years, but for the most part, the trees across the whole country are babies. 100 years, 150 years tops, 200 maybe. And that, you know, if there were floods and fires that came through like this, the whole country, did we cut down all the trees because we needed all that lumber to build all these buildings? I would argue absolutely not, because that's a whole lot of lumber. There weren't nearly as many people back in that time, and apparently what they were building was all rock. So here's another look at a picture from the flood of 1913. Like, look how tall these buildings are, right? And look how much water that is. That's a lot of water right there. And this is the 1913 one. There were ones well before this. So we've got the Great Flood of 1913 occurred between March 23 and 26. So a few days, like this happens quick. After major rivers in central and eastern United States flooded from runoff and several days of heavy rain. So boom, storm rolls in and just drops tons and tons of water within just a few days. And all of a sudden, you've got an entire city flooded. The death toll from the flood of 1913 places a second to the Johnstown flood of 1889. Okay, we see another one just what, not even 25 years earlier. And then I always think this is interesting. The contents of the wiki page here have an impact section, and it's related to federal legislation and state and local programs. And I'll drop this image here. A lot of people don't think that it's possible to, oh, look at this picture. Look at that. The Flood Control Act of 1917 was the first several pieces of legislation that eventually led to the creation of Natural Flood Insurance Program and the Federal Emergency Management Agency. So it's just like they do. They came in and used a disaster, maybe even created one to create organizations that get to control the resources of the land and all that sort of thing. So now we'll take a look at the Mantua Center Historic District, some leftover buildings from these ancient, amazing builders. But of course, we've thrown white siding on top of all of the amazing rock and just made them look not as impressive as they actually are. Here I am walking up into the buildings here. You can see this big boy. White paneling on the outside. You can see the brick though, the chimneys, and buried windows. Just a lot of buildings sitting underneath the earth right here. And we still haven't even paved these roads yet. Just still dirt. There's the top of the chimney. Now here's the front of that building we were just looking at. And you'll see right here, it's owned by that same church, the Disciples of Christ, chalice with the X cross through it. I mean, you can clearly see we've got doors sitting beneath the ground, giving you an entrance into the more bottom parts of the building. So the 1840 Town Hall features an octagonal dome. We'll take it, this is another building now, different building, the Town Hall building. Features an octagonal dome, sits on the northeast corner, this dome right up here. I'll give you a little better, some different angles of it in a second. But again, very cool, big building, some unique designs on it. Some stained glass window it looks like there, but again with the siding thrown on top of it. So here's just the other side of that sign looking back at that church that we were just looking at. And then if you pan over here to the side, you'll see it's got a little war memorial there in the middle. And then across the street, we can see more buildings, rock buildings with siding thrown over the top of them. Stairs that don't match the building, going into weird spots of the building with metal railing that doesn't match the building. Rock builders wouldn't use little metal rails for their stairs, they would use rock. And everything on the back of this building just painted white, absolutely covered up and painted white. This was, I don't know quite what to make of this. No, I don't know, here's my guess on it. I think, you've heard me say it before, I think the people, the actual builders of these buildings, if you're putting up buildings like that, you know how to do the power, the water. Like, I don't think you have to build some hole in the ground a few feet away from the building and that's where everybody has to take care of their business. And like, if you're doing something like that, you know how to run water, clean water, good water, you know how to do that stuff if you're putting up these crazy buildings. And so this is just, I think when the people showed up and got to start using these buildings, they didn't know the technologies or the electrical systems might not be the right word, but power systems, you know, they just didn't know how to. I think that stuff is built into these buildings and likely buried beneath, you know, because if we think about it right now, our waterways are buried beneath our buildings. These buildings sit a long ways underneath the ground, so their water systems are probably even below that. So I just think we didn't know how or couldn't access the like power systems, utility systems that are actually part of these buildings. And so we had to build, actually, like, I think this is probably something we did throw up. And if they had to actually build outhouses to go to the bathroom, they would have built really awesome, cool looking, beautifully built outhouses for taking care of their business. But I think we just didn't know how to use the buildings, or that those parts of the buildings are buried. And this is the best we could do, was actually digging up some holes in the ground outside of these big buildings, and that's where we take care of business. The amount of paint on this, just the amount of white paint that's been slapped on this building. And they've just, what great lengths they've gone to cover everything up. And if you look right here, like this square, I mean, I don't know, what was that? A much bigger window. This is probably just a huge window right here that they covered up. Just massive, beautiful stained glass window. Just covered it up, painted it white. Here's that building we were just looking at from the side now across the street. And again, and like we built a little door to get into the building right there. Here's another spot where you can see the rock work underneath. Just big, crispy, well-cut blocks of solid, heavy rock. And then we've got our, oh my gosh. We've got our wood stairs that we built up here to somehow get into the building, and some rinky-dink metal railing. And then look at this dome. Paint it, paint it, paint it white. Cover it and paint it white. Look at the Airbnb I stayed at in Mantua. This was just a few minutes drive from that historical center we were just looking at. And they say that this home was built in 1820. Okay, the story behind this home originally is that it was the earliest they trace this home to is that in the early 1800s, it was gifted to a soldier that had just got out of the army. 250 acres or something like that, and this home. And I think it was actually sitting here long before it was gifted to that soldier, but it was, someone laid claim on it and then started, I don't know, gifting it out, selling it out, however that works. But like I've been saying, I think there were plenty of buildings, solid ones, sitting around, and then people started to occupy them. And in this case, this was given from the federal government to a soldier to occupy. And I talked to the current owners here, and I talked to neighbors, just people that have been in this area, and the story of that dude goes back to, they called him sneaky. Like he never really would answer your questions, and he was always sneaking around, like so that's interesting. Like there was apparently this was gifted to a sneaky kind of sketchy character for being in the war. So here's a look at it just coming out of the front door onto the porch here. And there's a look at all the white siding. And there's a look at some of the rock work. And you can see buried building. And I did get down into the basement. This is the basement right here. But I'll show you in the basement in just a second. You can see clear signs of the building going down quite a bit further. Here's a look at it from the side. Really beautiful home, very well kept. Here's a look at it from the other side. You can see the chimney there, buried rock building. Like that's it right there. And I'll show you from inside of the basement. They've actually covered up some of these windows, and it extends back here a ways. And again, under all that is still brick. Actually right here on the side, where we see this little entrance right here, not the greatest shot of it, but right there, this is still brick, and this actually used to be a second chimney. And I'm air quoting chimney because I don't know, hopefully I make a video on this at some point, but the more I've been studying and looking at these buildings and architecture and what is left over from previous times, chimneys seem to be some of the best standing, the strongest stuff that's still standing after it's just been beat up over time and floods and fires. And I don't know, to me, again, it doesn't make sense that they were just only about throwing little pieces of wood in there to heat whatever little room you're in.
Diagon Alley!
Especially when you're building the really, really big stuff. Sure, maybe like this, a couple chimneys could heat the place. But in those really big buildings, just like one or two chimneys or whatever, just doesn't make sense. So I don't know, maybe there was an alternate purpose, and then we showed up and found out that we could throw some wood in there and light it on fire, and it would keep us a little bit warmer inside of these buildings. But I don't know, there might be something more to chimneys. Now here's a look at it from the inside. This is just walking in the front door and taking a right. Drops you into the kitchen here, and then into the living room. And here you can see, so there's a look at the fireplace, and you can see at the top all the original wood beaming, which is super cool. And then right here, when you look at the fireplace, I don't know, it's not symmetrical. Like over here on the right side, there's more like ledge or whatever, but then on the left it's just cut off right here. And then we've got a piece of wood right here like slapped on the top. Okay, so moving through the living room here, and then you go up the stairs, and these stairs, and the stairs right here were wood. Here's a little bedroom or a little office. Here's the bathroom, and there's a look down the stairs. And then you've just got these nice tall windows which let in a bunch of light, which I really love. There's the view out the window. Here's another little view out of this bedroom. Nice little pond over there. And then here's this bedroom. And here's a walk down into the basement. So again, you can see already right here, this is this wood and the railing, that's not original to this, the builders that built this, that did everything with that rock. This rinky-dink railing is, again, our newer, cheaper, dinkier way of getting down into the lower parts of this building. And a couple more weird things down here. So right there, you can see they covered up where there was a little window slot. And then also right here, you can see there's another brick pillar right there that our lumber is just resting on top of. Or sorry, I guess that's not lumber. So, okay, there we go. So right there, that's a metal beam. So we've got an original brick pillar that's inside of this rock. At least this is what it looks like. And then we put a couple more bricks on top of there to make it the right height to put this metal beam. That there's no way this is, the builders of this rock didn't do this. This is us coming in and taking this rock structure and turning it into something workable for us. And we did that by a couple pieces of rock on top of the original stuff, and then throwing a metal beam on top of that, and then laying our wood on top of these metal beams. Same thing here. And then you've got these, I don't know, cinder block looking things. Again, I just think this is us. We were able to get to this far down in the building or whatever. And we got in there and we're like, okay, let's build, like this is a tall building here. We could turn this into a couple floors or whatever, but we got to put a floor here. So we need to put some pillars down here to build that floor. There's already some stuff here we can use, but it looks like maybe we got to put up a couple more pillars. So we'll do that with cinder blocks. And then, some bricks we can find and stack it on top, and then we'll attach a metal stairway to it. I don't know exactly what's going on here, but it just doesn't look right. I'm not saying it looks unsafe or anything. Like, I felt great staying in this place. I love this place a lot, but I'm just, again, comparing the original build of the rock structure that's there and then all this other makeshift type of stuff. Another one, we've got another brick pillar right here, but then we stacked our metal railing on top of it, our metal pillar. And then across from the street here, I think I talked about this in a different video, but this is a barn that originally was, so this piece across the street was a part of the property originally when it was gifted to the soldier. And you can see same thing over there. You've got a rock foundation, and then they've just built with their lumber on top of it. I think, again, just old rock building poking up, left over from floods and disasters. And then we showed up and started using it and building on top of it. Same with this tower next to it, which turned into a farm silo or whatever, but I would say that's an original rock structure from the original building. And so maybe this, what the house is built on top of, what the barn's built on top of, what this little storage shed is built on top of, I think it's likely that all of that is leftover rock from the previous building that was here, the building that is here, but it's just buried. And they turned those rock structures they repaired them and fixed them up and turned them into something that's livable for us, and painted it white on the outside so it doesn't look like what it is. And then here's a quick look up in the attic. Turn on the light. The lighting's not great in here, but you can see over there's still the brick running up.